Well then, hello and welcome to 1 Week, 1 Year, a podcast where we watch and discuss every year of film history in order, starting in 1895, the dawn of cinema. This episode is 1951. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Ellie. I'm a film projectionist, and joining me as always is...
I'm Glenn Covell. I'm a filmmaker.
And we are back to recording remotely again, which
True.
the last couple of times we ended up actually doing it in your apartment both times.
Yeah.
So that was
Now
nice.
we're back to the screen.
Now we're back to a couple milliseconds more delay between us, but also on the flip side, a soundboard, which I try and have restraint and not use.
So it all evens out.
What's up, Glenn? What's going on?
Not a whole lot. Still looking for work, but I finished the first draft of a short screenplay last night, so that's fun.
Last night, nice.
Yeah, feels good to finish something, even in a rough form.
But out of that roughness, you shape something. You hone it.
To
the most crystallized screenplay that there is. It's about crystals.
Not about crystals. It's about rats, but yeah.
It's called Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Rat.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're talking about movie-related stuff, because who cares about whatever else is going on in our lives? If we're talking about movie-related stuff, I just got back from Dallas, Texas, where I was going to become certified and trained in barcode projector technician stuff. So I took a projector and stripped it down to its parts, and then put it back together again. And
nice.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Learned about how the power flows from the distributors into the laser modules and then out to
a laser module.
They have laser driver modules, LDMs they call them. That's for the newfangled laser projectors. They got a different type of light source. But anyway, movie stuff. Well, we are a film history podcast, and we talk about films from history. So, but we like to give ourselves a little bit of more context. We like to kind of say, like, what was happening in 1951? Like, what was in the air? Hey, what's happening? They invented that phrase in 1951. What's happening? But we'd like to give ourselves a little bit more context. So, Glenn, will you take it away with the news?
Sure.
The news of the year, 1951. The U.S. Constitution is amended, restricting presidents to 2 terms. Duck and cover no more. The first hydrogen bomb is tested in the Marshall Islands. Soviet pups Dezek and Zigan are launched into space on an R-1 rocket, weightless for 4 minutes and safely landed back on Earth. Good boys. The UN convenes in Geneva to define international laws on refugees and seeking of asylum. A blue-colored sun rises over Europe, tinged by forest fires in Canada months earlier. Treaties officially end the Eastern and Western theaters of World War II. Harnessing the atom, experimental breeder reactor EBR-1 comes online, the first nuclear power plant. TV in homes. I Love Lucy's first episode debuts on television. Cahiers du Cinema prints its first issue. No argument over the auteurs, they have bylines. The Zenith Radio Company launches Phone Vision, the first pay-per-view system for movies on TV.
Also, I Love Lucy, first episode, shot by our old friend of the podcast. What's his name?
Only.
I see. I didn't look this up ahead of time, but it's Carl Freund.
That's right. Yeah, he's Freund of the podcast.
Yes, yeah, making Universal Monster Pictures and also I Love Lucy.
So we occasionally will throw a couple short films in there. This time we've got one. It's a quite a notable one though. It's the debut of a little guy called Stanley Kubrick.
Indeed.
So that's 1 Week, 1 Reel, and this is called The Day of the Fight.
Yeah, a documentary short.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of newsreel adjacent, I guess. It's not quite a newsreel.
Yeah, it's like a little documentary portrait it's the type of subject matter that you might see in a newsreel.
Hmm.
But I think it's like maybe
It's more
approached
of
a
a
little
it's
more
a sort of
artfully.
a human interest newsreel.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I think that, like, this is called The Day of the Fight. It's about a boxer, but it focuses mainly on the day that he leading up to the
Right.
fight.
It's him like going to lunch and like getting ready and yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting though. It like creates a kind of good like sense of tension, I think.
Mhm.
Because they have like a narrator who is kind of either adding in their own musings about anticipation and life and death and all that kind of stuff, or
Sure.
potentially like interpolating some of the things that the boxer has said. There are points where the narrator says, like, talks about how he finds the waiting all day, like he gets up and then his kind of agony of waiting, and time slows down up until the moment
Mm.
that the fight begins. And I think that's like it's like an interesting thing to focus on. It's an interesting aspect of boxing that I feel like is not really
Yeah.
explored often, or not explored this specifically, at least.
It is like an interesting little documentary short. I feel like definitely the most notable thing about it is that it's just the first thing that Stanley Kubrick ever directed that like has his name on it.
Hmm.
Right, he started more as like a photographer, and you can kind of see some. I don't know. Some of the framing is like very distinctive. I guess it's like you can tell there's real thought being put into it. But also, like, I don't know. I don't watch this and I'm like, oh man, you can totally tell that like the guy who made The Shining made this. It's like, no, this is just a '50s little documentary thing.
Yeah, I mean, like I think, like we were saying, it's like maybe a bit more elegantly composed. Like I would say like 15% more elegantly composed than you would expect something else like this to.
Sure.
But it's
Yeah.
not like, wow, we saw a glimmer of the filmmaking genius,
Yeah. But I think also like especially the early Kubrick stuff I've seen, you can kind of see a little bit more of that like kind of documentary esque background or like his sort of like street photography background coming through a bit. I mean, his second feature film, right? Second, I think is also about a boxer. So it's like that's clearly something that he had an interest in. Yeah, I feel like I don't have a whole lot to say about this, but it's cool.
I have often wondered about what the deal is with the cinematic obsession with boxers. Like,
I
it's
think
not.
it's just inherently kind of it's like people punching each other. That's pretty cinematic. Like
But
the lighting of it, it's in this like very contained like square space.
I guess, but it's like,
Yeah.
I think I feel this way about, and maybe these are just things that I might not particularly resonate with otherwise,
Mm.
but like the idea of like these two professions, like boxing and cowboy, like being like entire genres of movie. It's like,
Right.
why don't they have barista movies? Why don't they have zookeeper movies? Except for the
Because
Kevin
baristas
James
and
one.
zookeepers aren't going around fighting people. Is why.
But like, you can find tension in all sorts of situations.
Oh,
And
no
like,
argument here. Yeah.
and like, it is interesting that it's like a well that people keep returning to
Yeah.
very specifically.
I think it's low hanging fruit. It's like it's
I think they
easier
wear
to
a cup for that.
it's easier to inject drama into the story of two people getting into a ring and punching each other's lights out than it is to be, necessarily about a barista. But bringing it back to this short film, this short film isn't really about the fighting at all. It's about the going to coffee shops part.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
I think one of my favorite moments from the movie Creed is
Hmm.
when it feels like reminiscent of the sort of pre-boxing match jitters or just
Mm.
kind of feelings that this movie uh touches on, which is like the moment where he's like about to go out. He's got like his boxing gloves like taped to his hands, and then he's just suddenly like, get my gloves off, cut my gloves off, I gotta take a shit. And like, and it just feels like it's like such a real moment in, a sort of a heightened movie. And I feel like I think it's like an incredible moment in the movie
Yeah.
Creed.
I do remember that moment really sticking out to me also. And I think that it gets called back in one or both of the sequels too, where it's like he has to take a shit before every fight. That's like his thing.
I haven't seen any of the
I might
sequels.
be misremembering, but I feel like I have a memory of that coming back up in one of the other movies.
Well, shall we move on to our feature presentation?
Sure.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
I think one that we can start out with, maybe, that feels like it evokes a kind of Kubrickian hostility is Streetcar Named Desire, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely, there's a little Jack Torrance in Marlon Brando's performance, but whatever. Anyway, quick summary, because honestly, like I've seen the Simpsons episode about this movie probably a dozen times, and I never really picked up much of what actually happens in the movie. But then once I watched the movie and then rewatched the Simpsons episode, I was like, it has all the beats in it.
Right.
Okay. But
Right, yeah.
Blanche Dubois arrives in New Orleans. There's kind of a lot of mystery about her past. She hops on a streetcar named Desire to get to, which is a real streetcar, which is kind of wild.
Well, it wasn't a real streetcar, right? I think even by the time this movie came out, it wasn't like
at the
in
time that
service
it was
anymore.
written, it was a real streetcar.
Right.
And then it's went out of service within a couple years. But she's visiting her sister, or at least like there are mysterious reasons why she has had to leave town from their old kind of plantation home, and she keeps not really filling in the details but feeling like a lot of kind of caginess and guilt about it. She moves into a small apartment with her younger sister and her new brother-in-law, played by Marlon Brando. It's Vivian Lee, who is Desire, or not Desire, Blanche, which
The streetcar is named Desire. She is named Blanche.
she plays a streetcar. Her sister is Stella, and then her sister's husband, Stanley Kowalski, is immediately very distrustful of her. There's a lot in the beginning of the movie of like this back and forth of like everybody is kind of like a bad person in some way, but then like at some moments somebody's being a bit worse of a person, and you're kind of like back and forth like whose side you're on a little bit. And eventually more and more of Blanche's history starts coming out, and her kind of pure image that she has presented of herself is kind of cracking in particular ways that make her departure seem under much more forced circumstances. And also more and more is revealed of these kind of like psychological issues that she's having sort of as a result of all of this. It sort of ends with, I don't know, like a sort of confrontation, I suppose, between Blanche and Stanley over all of her lies, basically. And she kind of is creating a torrent in the already torrential lives of these people, and she ends up getting kicked to the curb.
Not just kicked out, but institutionalized.
That's right. Yes.
Sent away to the asylum, which in the 1950s was not a great fate. If you've seen the movie Shutter Island, you might get a I don't get the sense you were being sent to Shutter Island, but
I mean, a very kind stranger brought her there. So
right.
Yeah, this movie is like a lot of just really rough stuff happening.
Right. Yeah, it's a bad vibes movie, I would say. I think it is good. I don't love it. I think it is, I don't know. I like respect this movie a lot, even though I don't necessarily like, I don't really enjoy watching it, I guess. I think this is like the second time I've seen it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I am in a similar page with you. I think I might have liked it a bit better than you did, but it is, I think there are parts of the movie that don't fully come together for me, but like I can look at it and go like, what's happening here is very like complex character work. And like complex theming that is happening, like a lot of things that it's talking about, a lot of like sort of ambivalence toward right and wrong that the movie has. There are no heroes in this movie, really. Like
No,
everybody,
I wouldn't say so.
Pretty much everybody is kind of sick, and they end up sicker by the end of the movie.
I mean, I think there's a lot in this movie about like class and about like it's a layered text for sure.
I mean, like, Stanley and Stella, like, have a very clearly, like, abusive relationship. Stella being maybe, like, the purest person in the movie, she is completely doesn't mind being abused, basically, and just goes right back to him every time.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's a pretty. I mean, it's a maybe slightly oversimplified depiction of it, but I do think it's a generally a pretty good like depiction of kind of like domestic abuse and kind of like the cyclical nature of that.
yeah, yeah. I guess I shouldn't say, like, doesn't mind per se, but, like, I think, like,
Right. It's like
she
is very defensive of Stanley when Blanche is like calling out. It's like, hey, this guy sucks and is like really violent and scary. And she's like, that's just how he is.
yeah, like, I'm over it. Stop complaining, you know?
Yeah. But
Um,
then also is like, right, will run away to the upstairs neighbor.
Leading to the iconic
Right.
scene where Marlon Brando is going, Stella!
Yeah.
Hey, Stella!
He's got to go outside and yell upstairs.
Yeah. Speaking of Marlon Brando, I think he really stands out in this movie.
Oh,
Like,
sure. Yeah.
it really feels like he, just with this performance, is ushering in like a brand new form of acting that we have not seen in anything before. It's kind of revelatory, I think.
Right. Well, because it is like, he didn't invent method acting. You know, he didn't necessarily like invent any of this stuff, but this does feel like a real kind of turning point in kind of Hollywood movies. Whereas like we've not really, I mean, we haven't watched every movie up to this point, but certainly in like the, you know, the broad sort of like popular big stuff that we've been watching, we've never really seen a performance like this or kind of a character presented in quite the same way. Like, I do feel like Marlon Brando, specifically Marlon Brando's performance in this movie, did sort of create a shift in like performance style and also kind of somewhat at least helped create, I think, along with James Dean, which we haven't gotten to yet, kind of a whole like I don't know, like type of leading man actor and performance and character that I think is still pretty like persistent now. Like the idea of this like very like internal, I don't know, the idea of the kind of like the method actor who's like really intense and like will like push himself really far, and that like I don't know, like I think before this, right, like leading man actors in Hollywood are like much more the kind of the Cary Grant type, the Jimmy Stewarts, the kind of more like friendly, even if they're playing like difficult characters or villains, even have this kind of public image of like poise and polish. And then Marlon Brando comes up and is like chewing food in every scene and like
Yeah.
talking through it and
And he's like
screaming and like
mumbling
ripping
and
his shirt off, and everyone's like, "Whoa, holy shit!" And I think that's almost still like an image of like this is what acting is.
right. But I don't think it's not just intensity. It's like realism, you know?
Right.
It's
Yeah. Which
in
is
the
like
same way
I
that
think like a theme in this movie too of like right, his performance is like so juxtaposed against like his performance and his character juxtaposed against Blanche, who I think is
she's putting together things. She's got an image, right? Like
right. But I think
like
even
her
like the performance of that character is much more of a kind of I don't know 1940s style
yeah. I think
performance,
pretty
whereas
much everybody else is performing
yeah,
in the way that most other movies are performed, or most other
yeah,
actors perform. And then like Marlon Brando just sticks way out,
yeah,
like
in a way
as
that feels
someone.
very 1950s, like this like 1950s sort of like leading like young leading man actor who's like really intense is like to me it just seems like a very 1950s thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and he feels like plucked out of reality, right? Like he feels like a kind of like shitty boyfriend, like but a real
Mm,
shitty boyfriend, you
right.
know?
Yeah.
Like the way that he kind of like holds himself, the way that he like leans against things, it's like it's
A lot
all
of great
these like
leaning in this movie.
yeah, yeah. It's all these like subtle ways where like yeah, he just brings a ridiculous level of realism to this character.
Hmm.
And I think even like there are some ways that you can tell that like yeah, he's ripping his shirt off. Like there is something that is like a little heightened about what he's doing. It's not
Hmm.
like I feel like there has been like a more recent maybe in the last like 30 years or so or 40 years sort of thing to say like have people sometimes stumble over their speech or say things incorrectly and then correct themselves. Like, it's an occasional thing that people do to sort of bring like a realism to a script that doesn't feel so written.
Hmm.
And it feels like this is like the equivalent of that from the
Right.
50s.
Well,
Yeah.
as I briefly mentioned, he's eating in a lot of his scenes. He's like talking with his mouth full. And also Brando just in general is, not known for his like clear speech. He's a very mumbly actor.
Yeah.
And that feels very weird I'm just for this time period. Like that wasn't really a thing people did all
No.
that much. Like it was like, no, you're on screen, like talk clearly. And he was like, blah, 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 and it's just like it. And that's, I don't know. I'm sort of two minds about it because it does feel more real. And like, I do think it's a really strong performance. But I don't know, there's a line that Blanche says where she says, I don't want realism, I want magic, sort of
Mm,
reflecting her character. Like her character is very
mhm.
much like in denial about herself, in denial about the world she occupies, is like very repressed, whereas like Stanley's entirely not repressed. He has zero repression.
He has zero
Um,
chill.
he's zero chill, zero like inhibition. I got the sense maybe that like the there's like a theme in this movie of almost like we're trying to give you as an audience like realism in a way that you haven't experienced before in a movie, which I think this movie is doing. And like there's definite appeal to that. I think, movies need to have some semblance of realism to them, but I don't know. More and more I'm sort of drawn to stuff that like actively pushes realism away.
Sure. I mean, I mean, maybe there's like to now is the time to swing back a little bit, but like, if we're looking at this in the context of the 40s and 50s, it's like we're watching the beginning of something different, I think, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
which is really neat. You mentioned like the kind of, Blanche's sort of delusions about herself. It's interesting how in this movie, like Blanche and Stanley are both like monstrous people, but they're monstrous people in like completely different ways. One is
Hmm.
a sort of outbursty monstrous person. Another one is like a reserved kind of, not even intentional, but like I don't think she's scheming, but she is definitely hiding things and being
Hmm.
deliberate about like the way that she presents herself. And she knows that some of the things that she is inclined to do are, something to be frowned upon, and hides those things. Something that I had no idea about going into this movie and was quite, surprising, is to find out that the main character of the movie is a pedophile.
Yeah.
Like, that is a wild turn. And like, we find out that more or less that is the reason why she lost her job and had to leave town, was that she was a high school English teacher, and she got in trouble for getting with like a 17-year old.
I mean, that'll do it.
Yeah. This movie, yeah, it's just a lot of rough people that are bouncing off each other, and also a lot of rough people who like have a hard time not being rough, right?
Mm.
Like, Stanley can't stop himself from being the way that he is. Blanche, when she sees a paper boy, she's just like, kiss me on the mouth while no one's looking.
It's true. I think I really like about this movie is it feels it's like Blanche and Stanley immediately are like at odds with each other, like very antagonistic the entire time. Um, and it does feel like both of them, even though they don't like each other, they both kind of like see through each other's like bullshit really quickly. Like Blanche sees
Mm-hmm.
Stanley and Amelia is like, this guy is like a brute. Like this guy he's violent, he's angry, he's like all this stuff. And Stella's like, nice, like I drink sometimes, but it's fine. And then Stanley immediately is like, she's lying to you. Like she's a liar. Like she is not on the up and up. And like they both have this thing where like they immediately kind of like see into the like heart of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so like there's a weird like intimacy that those two characters have of just like seeing each other, even though there's like so much intensity and like violence between them also.
Yeah. And I mean, their relationship culminates in, a supposed violent intimacy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I actually, honestly, when I was watching the movie, did not put this together until afterward. I think it might be a little more explicit in the play that, like,
I
or
believe so, yeah.
it it is more explicitly hinted at in the play, but not like, I think that neither of them fully tells you whether this happened or not. But there's like, it's like heavily implied that at this kind of crescendo of argument and tension and violence, that Stanley rapes Blanche. It's like a really heavy thing to put in there. It's also, it like coincides with this moment where her mind entirely breaks, and it is coinciding also with this moment of everybody finding out like how much of a piece of shit she is, and just taking her out of their lives. And so the ambiguity, I guess, is like, did she like go all the way from kooky to insane asylum as a result of her entire life crashing down, or was it as a result of, this kind of interaction with Stanley? It doesn't comment on it, and I kind of just assumed the former because I just didn't pick up on the hint that it was
Mm.
dropping. But it's definitely, the film kind of ends with like the way that maybe these like horrible people, I mean, there isn't like a comeuppance so much. Stanley and Stella go back to their abusive lives together, and Blanche is taken off to an asylum after she has almost gone catatonic. And yeah, some, I don't know, I don't really know what to say about it except it's just
Yeah.
rough,
The movie kind of ends on a slightly more, I guess, hopeful note of like the movie ends with Stella with her newborn baby running into the upstairs apartment, which we've seen before, and we've seen her like come back from that before. I feel like that apparently in the play, that's like, it's the play is much more of a kind of like, this cycle is going to continue, whereas I think the movie is like kind of trying to push a little bit more towards like, maybe this whole thing with her sister is going to break Stella out of her like abusive cycle,
right. Yeah.
which I think is sort of how this movie gets away with. Like, this movie does feel as like a code era movie. Like, it's dealing with such heavy, dark subject matter, and yet still kind of getting away with it. I guess mostly just by doing it all just through implication.
Yeah. One aspect of this movie that was cut out from the play that was definitely code related is that, like, another kind of part of Blanche's past that is revealed in both versions is that her previous husband had killed himself. And it had sort of happened as a result of an interaction with her. And like, she feels blame for it, or like blames herself for it. In the movie, it's like, we had an argument and then he shot himself. And in the play, it is, I caught him with another man and told him he should be ashamed of himself, and then he shot himself. That is definitely something that would not be able to make it into this movie, but it feels like another kind of layer in like Blanche's sort
Hmm.
of status obsessed cruelty, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Her like self-imposed image of like the Southern Belle and like what
Yeah.
that, and it's like almost that being kind of like stripped away from her is almost like, as she loses that kind of like center of who she is. And it's even like other people bringing up stuff where it's like, oh, well, you don't live in like a plantation anymore. And she's like, no, but I did. I'm a Southern Belle. That's who I am.
She creates an image for herself that like nobody would be able to live up to, let alone somebody who has so many proclivities for cruelty
Yeah.
as her.
Also, I don't think we mentioned Vivian Lee from Gone with the Wind playing another Southern Belle.
Yeah.
Kind of funny that it's like the two like biggest depictions of like the Southern Belle character archetype are both Vivian Lee.
Yeah. I was disappointed we didn't get any Cajun accents in this movie, though.
Sure, yeah.
We got the
Um,
I'm just Blanche Dubois.
yeah. Which even that I also like as much as, I think Marlon Brando's performance is sort of exemplary of a certain type of like capital A acting, right? I feel like Vivian Lee is also, the sort of like, I don't know, doing an accent and just being like very, there's a lot of like affectation to her character and to her performance. But like,
Yeah.
and that is also one of those things where it's like the I don't know, the two poles, the two kind of like opposite be equal, like pop
Are you
culture
referencing
depictions
how
of
Stanley Kowalski is Polish?
no.
The two Poles.
Oh no, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think that it like their acting styles emphasize the different things that are going on with these characters. Where like Brando's realism emphasizes Blanche's constructedness, and Blanche's
Yeah.
kind of classic Hollywood acting emphasizes Stanley's roughness. So yeah, it's good.
I was gonna we could have talked about Elia Kazan, but we've been talking a little bit about the Blacklist.
We've touched on it. Was there something that you wanted to say?
Just that Elia Kazan sort of a divisive figure due to his involvement in McCarthyism.
What did he do related to the Blacklist?
Do you not know about this? Okay, but I guess we got to get into it then. Elia Kazan, director of Streetcar Named Desire. Also, I think deserves a lot of credit for sort of like popularizing like the kind of like method acting in Hollywood stuff. I think it was like a year or two after this movie named names to the House Un-American Activities Board.
Yikes.
And made some enemies in Hollywood due to that. I know that like Orson Welles in some later interview called him a traitor and pointed out that like Elia Kazan could work in New York, like could still get work in New York in theater, while a lot of the people that he named were like Hollywood screenwriters and like they're out of work. Definitely lost some friends over that. I think like a thing that Kazan sort of tried to defend himself with is like he only named people that he knew on what HUAC already knew about. So he was like, I'm not telling them anything they don't already know, but it's still like I can definitely see people feeling very betrayed by him.
Sure.
And then when he got an honorary Oscar in like the early 90s, I want to say. And there's like clips where you see like there's a lot of people in the audience who are like not applauding. Like very distinctly.
Yeah. That's right. I remember this. Yeah.
But it's funny that even like I think in that same interview where Orson Welles calls him a traitor, he like acknowledges like very good director though. Like I gotta at least give him props for how good of a director he is. So I'm interested to like I've seen a couple other Elia Kazan movies, and I'm curious. I guess just like with that knowledge of like I don't know if it really applies to this movie at all, but some historical context outside of the news segment.
That's what we're here for.
Another movie that feels very distinctly 1950s in a way that I don't think we've really seen yet on the show is The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Klaatu Barada Nikto.
Directed by Robert Wise.
Yeah.
A UFO picture.
Last seen by us as the editor of Citizen Kane, but gonna be going on to some more movies that we will surely cover.
Yeah. Very notable director. What a picture.
Yeah.
This is our first like proper like 50s flying saucer movie.
It is like so immediately like from the beginning, like look at this flying saucers.
Right. It's like this movie is like setting the standard for a 1950s alien movie.
Yeah.
I guess kind of this and The Thing from Another World, which we didn't watch for the show, but I've seen before. So we can kind of maybe integrate some of that into the discussion. I don't know. Have you seen the original The Thing?
No. I've only seen the 2011 one.
Oh no. It's funny because that movie also feel like has some like unusual like naturalistic acting in it too, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Klaatu. You mentioned the score, which is like right off the bat you were just getting like theremin boom in your face, like
Yeah,
This
and
is a 50s sci-fi movie, if ever there
it's
was one.
it's kind of wild, yeah. Just like looking at the robot, Gorf,
Gort.
and Gort, Gorp, um, and the spaceship, the music, the vibes, it all
Mm.
is just like, I mean, it's interesting because this movie has aesthetics that I think that we have associated with 50s sci-fi schlock, but it kind of has ambitions, you know? It's
Yeah.
not, I don't think it's like a low effort movie like a lot of those
No, not at all.
things like
Yeah.
that. There are things about it that are campy, but maybe they're campy more in retrospect, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. The little synopsis is that in a flying saucer lands in Washington D.C. Gasp, and
That's where
out
I
pops.
am.
Yeah. Oh my God. Um, right. This is a real Washington D.C. movie.
Yes, it is. And I should while we're talking about it, I will mention that I did the Leonardo DiCaprio meme at the TV while I was watching it
Every
because
scene.
they show a shot of the front of the National Gallery of Art, like very briefly, as
Yeah.
the UFO's landing. And I was like, that's my work. That's my work. Like, I was like, I walk up those stairs sometimes.
Perfect. And so, like, the military gets called. A man pops out, who we later learn is named Klaatu. And the army immediately shoots him. But he's like, "Hey, I'm here to communicate with you. Like, I'm from another planet. I've got my robot here. Let's talk." So, like, right off the bat, there's tension. The army is not doing a great job at first contact. And so Klaatu sort of escapes the hospital he's sort of being held at by the army and goes undercover as just the traveling weirdo.
Yeah.
And sets up shop in like a boarding house or like an apartment building where he befriends the people living there. And he's sort of like, teach me about your ways. It is revealed that he is there to sort of like, I guess, sort of give Earth as and humanity as a collective species a bit of an ultimatum, being like, all the other planets realize that you're making atomic bombs now, and that's not cool. And because you've done that, and you're also building rockets that can reach other planets soon, it's not just your problem anymore. It's going to be all of our problems. And so if you want to continue living, you're going to have to follow our rules enforced by our race of invincible robots that we built to police ourselves. And if you don't like it, too bad. And it's I think the sentiment of this movie is something I agree with, which is sort of like, humanity needs to collectively get their shit together and work together and like figure stuff out. I think the movie's presentation of sort of like, and this could be enforced with a impartial android race that will just vaporize you if you make a mistake, is maybe a little, I have some issues with that, with this sort of like interplanetary policing system. But overall, I think this movie is as just like a piece of like speculative fiction is very good.
Yeah. It's along those lines, it feels extremely of its moment. Like, this is a movie that is coming out a few years after the atom bomb was dropped, and a couple years into the Cold War, and already we get something that is just so thoroughly Cold War influenced. Like they snapped into a different era of existence so quickly,
Right.
that this movie just fully exists in a like era that is not even resembling pre-World War II.
It is kind of interesting that we started with the two movies that I feel like feel the most distinctly 1950s. I think there are a couple other movies that we watched from this year that, if you told me it came out in like 1947 to 1949, I'd totally believe it. Whereas like this and Streetcar are both like, they could not have existed any earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel like real kind of like, not as their turning point movies, but they're introducing like a whole new type of movie almost.
True. Yeah. A new type of like acting with Brando, and a new type of just like kind of genre, more or less. I mean, there are definitely definitely sci-fi movies, but this type of sci-fi movie for
Yeah.
sure.
And especially of like, right, there's been like space travel movies, but this like having like aliens arriving on Earth and like to teach us lessons and to like, there being conflict and but there being cooperation. If there are previous examples of that, they're certainly not that well known, and I don't think they take it to kind of the degree this does. I do think this is kind of an interesting counterpoint to The Thing from Another World also, because that is also about like an alien visiting Earth that is like so the opposite. It's like that is a creature that is coming to murder us. That is like in very much presented as inhuman, whereas like Klaatu is just kind of a guy.
Yeah. I think he has some like weird organs going on. When they when they scan him,
yeah.
they find some, Doctor Who type stuff going on inside of him. But yeah, like there's an interesting thing about this movie, which is like how it is set in our nation's capital. It's an American movie, but it is a movie that, it is trying to advocate for a better version of the world that definitely did not come about. And I don't think the movie necessarily thinks that it will come about. And so it has a surprisingly cynical perspective, I think. Like it is a movie that is like about a guy trying to do the right thing and everybody stopping him the entire time. And, we can quibble about like the sort of sci-fi rationale and method for him.
Right. I think
thing.
the lore, maybe I have a couple notes on, but like the actual like thematics that this movie is presenting, I agree with.
Yeah, like so like, this is a movie about first contact where it immediately begins with violence. Like there's someone who comes in peace
from Earth, not from
and and Earth and the Americans are too trigger happy. They're too distrustful, and
it feels so pointed that like he comes out of the spaceship, he like takes something out of his pocket, and like the immediate response is shoot him.
Yeah.
It's like so incredibly fearful. Which I also like
to the feelings of the era. Certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not entirely like right, and it's easy to watch this movie and be like they're wrong, but it's also like it's a human instinct to be defensive and to be fearful of the unknown.
But like there's also a point in this movie where, he kind of makes friends with a little boy who's like part of the
oh boy.
Golly gee, alien,
mister. Such a like 50s little boy with his like hat and his striped shirt, and he's just like, oh boy, I love airplanes.
So like he's kind of babysitting this kid, and he takes him across the landmarks of Washington D.C. They go to the Arlington Memorial, and they go to other they go to all these spots. And it is like the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington montage, except it's kind of like a meditation on America and the world's failures. Like instead of
it is kind of like
look how cool America is.
It's this place that's full of monuments with these like great quotes of leaders and like platitudes. And it is, I mean, especially right now, it feels so hollow to like look at that stuff, I think. I mean, it feels hollow, and it does feel hopeful. Like it's nice to have monuments to ideals, but if you're not going to actually follow those ideals, what's the point of having the monuments a little bit?
Sure.
And I think movie is at least questioning that. It's sort of like asking that question a little bit of like
it's taking a surprisingly like quote unquote un-American stance for a movie that's coming out during, the McCarthyism, right? The movie starts mounting more and more elements that make Klaatu basically space Jesus. They start off with him assuming the identity of a carpenter, and I was like,
well, no, his Earth alias is Carpenter.
Yeah. His name is Carpenter, and like when I saw
which
that,
I would say is maybe more on the nose than that being his profession, but yeah.
Sorry. The part where they're at the Arlington Memorial, he's talking about like he's just stunned at all of the death in front of him, and he's like, "This is from war. Like this is how awful,
Yeah.
And he is this peacenik from space, and along more with the Jesus stuff, there's a point where he dies and is resurrected. And he's like, preaching this message that the like institutional powers cannot handle, and they kill him for it. It is, and the moral of the movie, despite the kind of complicated lore, which we'll talk about, is that like we are doing things the wrong way, and we have the capability of being peaceful, but are just choosing not to be.
Yeah. Right, like right when Klaatu shows up, he's like talking to the army generals or whatever, and he's like, "Hey, I'm from space. I'm here to talk to humanity. Like, get all your leaders together. Like, you have a
Right.
UN
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
Like, get everyone, like, round up everybody. Like, I got to talk to everyone at once. Like, I'm not just going to talk to you." And they're like, "Well, I don't know. That could be a little complicated." Which, as someone from Earth, I'm like, "Yeah, I bet." And Klaatu was like, what are you talking about? Like, what better time is there to do this? I'm from space. And they're like, whoa, you're being a little impatient, buddy. He goes, I'm impatient with stupidity, which is a great line. Also, to go off of like, right, all the kind of like Christian symbolism in this movie, there's a moment where right after Klaatu sort of returns, he's not really dead, they established, or like, oh no, he was like hibernating or whatever. Because then like the boy's mother, the sort of, I forget her name, she was like, oh, like, wow, like you have the technology to like come back from death. And he goes, no. Only the Almighty Spirit can do that. And I'm like, whoa, Klaatu, what? Hang on. Are you confirming the existence of a god? Like, what's going on? Like, Klaatu, you can't just drop that in the middle of like it's a really weird moment in this movie that seems like
that was put in because of Breen.
Was it like definitively like Breen was like that has to be in there?
He was supposed to.
That's definitely how it reads to me. Is it sort of like, yeah.
He was supposed to just die and come back. But they sort of like wanted to carve out a like this is the realm of God, and so they added this line in like before they shot it, which was that like, no, it's not that he was hibernating. He did die, and then he was just like, I'm able to come back for like a couple days, which is what Jesus did. But like I'm able to come back for a couple days, but I am dead. I will die. I will die fully soon. But like, yeah, that line about the Almighty Spirit, definitely like it's just like you're not allowed to have people come back from the dead.
It definitely read to me as sort of like not necessarily being forced upon the movie, but sort of like the writing being like taking a pretty like explicitly like Christian stance on like the concept of life and death.
Well,
but also in doing so, introducing lore into this movie that is insane.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're taking a specifically Christian stance. There's a reason why he didn't say God and why he said the Almighty Spirit,
But it's also like, combined with all of the other stuff. That's sort of how it, I don't know, was my takeaway.
I don't think so. I think I mean, I don't think they're trying to do anything Christian specifically with the Jesus symbolism. I think they're trying to emphasize that he is right. He's like, why are you booing me? I'm right. He like the movie is trying to say like, hey, he is trying to do the right thing and he's getting punished for doing the right thing. Remind you of anybody? Remind you of somebody who you're supposed to be a fan of and now you want to bomb the Russians, Like I think that's what the movie is doing with it. I don't think it's trying to make a specifically Christian point.
Yeah.
Speaking of him kind of being, Christ-like and everything, there's a point where Klaatu litters and I'm just like, the woke alien is littering, like come on.
On his planet the robots pick it all up.
Yeah.
Who's to say?
We should talk about the robots, which
we got to talk about Gort.
Gort. Iconic. Gort is an iconic
absolutely
robot, first off.
Almost definitely going to be the thumbnail for this episode. We haven't actually mentioned the actual title of the movie is referring to the fact that Klaatu stops like all technology except for hospitals and airplanes for a day. So it's like it is quite literal. It's like the day the Earth stood still, like stuff stopped moving.
And he did this in order to he was convening with some scientists. He Goodwill Hunting's an astrophysicist. To try and
let me just solve some equations, make a few notes here.
To try and like prove like, hey, I'm a legit alien and you should listen to me.
Yeah.
And he gets all the scientists together, and they're like, I'm afraid that nobody's going to come together and hear you out, alien. We want to create some non-violent way where you can where you can like get the entire world's attention. He goes, I know, I'll make the earth stand still.
Mm.
And
I can do that.
it still makes everybody panicky and violent.
Well,
surprise,
sure. Yeah.
surprise.
I do like how they specifically call out, though, like, no, hospitals kept working, like, airplanes in flight continued flying, like,
Yeah.
because they did have that question, like, hang on, Klaatu, have you thought this through fully? And he did.
He's got magic alien powers.
Right. But anyway, back to the robot, which is how they say it in this movie. At least some of the time. Gort is the sort of like enforcer, the unspeaking giant android who has like a heat ray comes out of his face.
Yeah,
He can
the only
vaporize guns
he
and
doesn't
tanks.
speak. The only thing that he actually does is raise up his visor to go Iron Giant mode and just like
Yes.
vaporize some fools, and then closes his visor once again. Yeah, very dispassionate killer.
The only way to stop him is to, well, I don't know. In this very specific scenario, is after Klaatu is dying, he tells God, what's her name? The mom, Helen. He tells Helen to tell Gort Klaatu Barada Nikto. Nikto, excuse me. It's spelled with a U, so.
Oh, is it?
Excuse my space pronunciation.
Maybe I said it wrong. I don't know.
They say ooh, whatever. I'm not entirely sure of the specifics.
It's spelled with an O. It is spelled with an O.
Oh well. Klaatu is spelled with a U.
Yes.
Yes.
2 A's.
Which I don't know. The only other instance I think I've ever heard that line being spoken is in Army of Darkness when it's you have to say it to the Book of the Dead. But I guess it is just a thing that sort of has permeated pop culture. Like it's around.
I mean, the names Gort and Klaatu are some of the things that feel the most 50s sci-fi about this.
Yeah.
Gort's
alien... whole design of just being like a big guy who's made of metal who like clomps around and like has a big laser eye.
Yeah, it's the I mean the alien ship was, we're getting a little distracted from right now, but like the alien ship was partially like sort of designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and Gort's visual design is like a bit more of a kind of clean mid-century version of like Maria from Metropolis.
I mean,
like
in that they're both robots, sure. I don't know if there's that much similarity between their design, but
they're not similar as much as like I'm saying like they're taking the robot from like a very different kind of design style, and like he's kind of clean edges, just like flat surfaces, no like kind of deco bells and whistles. He is just
Maria is very deco, Gort is very mid-century modern.
But yes, anyway, so like it comes up at some point in the movie that like the way that they have achieved this sort of like intergalactic peace is that Klaatu's planet found peace on their planet by creating a race, they call them a race of robots, that kind of have this like zero tolerance policy for violence, like a kind of eye for an eye sort of situation, but more severe, I guess.
Yeah.
And it has basically, they come to their peace naturally, but also they know they have this thing hovering around that will stop them the moment that they think about some, in any other way of being. And it sort of just through threats and fear forces them into doing the right thing, which, again, 1950s feels like this like metaphor for mutually assured destruction, right?
And I think as a metaphor it's sound, as a metaphor for like, he has the line, continue your present course and face destruction, humanity, if we continue doing things the way we're doing in the 1951, will likely destroy itself. That's the message this movie is presenting. However, I think the idea of a just robot cops that kill people, living under the penalty of just like, well, you do something wrong, robot cops going to show up and melt you. Is like, that's where I have some problems with that as a solution.
As an ethical solution, but
Sure, but it is, I think, as with a lot of movies, I think you have to kind of view it through the metaphorical lens. I mean, it's kind of a problem with the movie. It only works through metaphor, I think, if you actually are trying to like unpack the reality of what that would be like. It's pretty terrible.
I mean, it's taking the idea of a Cold War mutually assured destruction, which everybody is living in terror, and it's not actually
Mhm.
asking people to be any better. And it is saying, like, what if we had a mutually, like, what if we took the benefits of mutually assured destruction, as in we're not getting atom bombed right now, and gave it to an indestructible, dispassionate third party?
Yeah.
Like, maybe that would be the thing that would scare everybody into doing the right thing. And, should clarify, it's not like, you steal or something like that and he'll vaporize you. It's like,
They're pretty vague about it.
they're vague about it, but I think the implication is like, don't be violent. Like, the
Right,
whole
yeah.
reason that Klaatu comes to Earth is like, hey, we were going to let you do your thing while you're here, but
Mhm.
like, now that you're capable of interstellar violence, now you have to live by these
Yeah.
rules.
He does have a line that I do really like, which is security for all or no one is secure, which I think
Yeah.
is like that's all right. Klaatu, I'm on board with that part.
It is, it's just playing off of a lot of these ideas of like, yeah, self-defense and like being like why you do the right thing, why you'd be inclined to do the right thing. I just recently rewatched Death Note, and
Interesting.
it like or Gort and
The Netflix
the other
film, I'm
robots.
assuming.
No. And the Gort and the other aliens, or the other alien robots, are instituting a Death Note like approach, where it is like, in the story of Death Note, he is like, I'm going to create a better world by making everybody so afraid of being telepathically murdered for doing the wrong thing that the world will be peaceful. And, I think a lot of Death Note, maybe not as deeply as I would have liked, but a lot of Death Note is exploring the kind of issues with that idea.
Right. Death Note is very much exploring the idea that like this is one guy deciding to do that. He's not really creating a just society. He's just shaping society in his own image. He's just
Right.
sort of like he's just being a tyrannical figure at that point.
But I think the idea of our criticism of Gort is that he doesn't have the downfalls of Light Yagami as far
Sure,
as like
but who built
a
Gort? We don't know. We don't know what
exactly,
agendas
yeah.
they have. We don't know who
Yeah.
programmed Gort. We don't know what kind of biases Gort has.
as we find out the way that robot cars have to determine who lives and who dies,
Precisely.
that is
The reality of having robots as impartial is so not a thing that but they didn't know that in the 50s. How could they? They didn't have robots.
it's all a metaphor, Glenn.
It's all, and that's what I mean. I think like if you're actually trying to, if you're approaching this as, I guess, hard sci-fi in quotes, it's got a lot of holes. But if you're approaching it as like this is a broad metaphor for like the Cold War and mutually assured destruction, and of just like trying to give a 1950s American audience this idea of sort of like cooperation is good. No one's safe unless we're all safe. That's good. Disarmament. I think this movie is arguing for disarmament. I think that's good.
Yeah. I think one sort of other touch point that I forgot to mention about that from previously on the podcast is Himmelskibet, is a journey to Mars, or voyage to Mars, or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
The 1917, something like that, silent film that involves a first contact with an alien race where the humans are like get too scared and shoot somebody, and the aliens are these like proto hippies who like teach the violent humans a nicer, more peaceful way of being, along with this kind of like bringing in sci-fi, using sci-fi as metaphors for like what things are going on in our world. there's nothing that makes your human squabbles feel more insignificant than
Mm.
intergalactic creatures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of what makes this movie feel like it like needs to use the idea of intergalactic creatures in order to police the Earth is just like, what if this was the thing that would fix it? Or like, look at how pathetic we are that even in the presence of an alien, we can't get over our
Right.
squabbles.
Yeah. This movie was remade in, I think, like 2008, which I do not think that remake is particularly successful. But I do think a movie that is sort of taking similar ideas as from this movie is Arrival. I think Arrival is a much better sort of like updated contemporary version of this type of story.
Hmm.
I definitely thought about Arrival a lot. Rewatching this movie this time, having seen both previously. I've just right like a very sort of like on a grounded approach to like what a first contact would look like, and also this idea of sort of like fix all your stuff, humans, like this, aliens are here, we gotta we gotta figure
Yeah.
this out.
The inability of humans to cooperate when humans and human governments to cooperate when it feels like the situation would call for it.
Mm, yeah.
Except that in this movie, the alien just arrives speaking perfect English because he studied
Right,
it
yeah.
first.
I mean, it's the 50s, he's also just a guy. Two little fun little tidbits is that Klaatu will occasionally say things like, ah yes, your it's like 500 of your miles. He doesn't actually say Earth miles, which I really wish he did, but that's just kind of a sci-fi trope that I really enjoy, is when an alien shows up and it's like, ah yes, your Earth miles, or like, ah yeah, your Earth restaurants. Like, I it just always tickles me.
Klaatu is a bit smug. He's got a bit of a
Oh, he's very
smug
smug.
attitude.
He's very smug. Also, we find out that the aliens use diamonds as their money, which is just funny that he's just pulling diamonds out of his pocket left and right.
You'd think that they would have evolved beyond the need for money too, as
Right.
other sci-fi futures have, but
Sure.
you can't go that far, I guess.
Right. One thing at a time. The 50s audiences couldn't handle that.
And I mean, something that this movie feels downstream of is War of the Worlds also. Like there's a lot of War of the
Right.
Worlds kind of imagery in this movie.
Sure.
Even
Yeah.
though it's kind of presenting a sort of flipped perspective on it in some
Mhm.
ways.
Right. Which I guess we possibly will be talking about the George Powell War of the Worlds film in a few episodes, maybe.
Possibly. So there's another movie that is pretty cynical about human nature. And it is called Ace in the Hole.
Oh yeah. And yet, however, as much as this movie is presenting a fairly cynical view of just like humanity, maybe in general, or society, I don't know. I don't know. I really dug this movie. I thought this was like this really. I hesitate to call it fun, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed watching it very much.
Yeah, it's right. I know what you're talking about. It's not like
Well, because it's I don't know. This movie is maybe not like as full blown like noir as a lot of the other stuff we've watched recently, but this is at least noir adjacent. It's like it has a lot of noir, big noir energy, I guess.
yeah.
Just in its like characters and its like worldview.
But yeah, it's not a particularly expansive movie. It's mostly set in one place.
Right.
And so like it's not like it's a kind of a bottle pressure cooker thing.
Yeah.
So in this film there is a newspaper writer who's really good at his job, but he
hotshot reporter.
He's getting fired from every job that he's at because he plays things too loosely and he gets drunk all the time, and he's just like, I know that I'm the best, and look at you, buddy. You're going to be saving thousands of dollars by hiring me because I'm worth thousands of dollars more than you're going to pay me.
Yeah. He's sort of self-imposed this like image of himself that is like, oh, he's a mess, but god damn it, he's the best. But it's like, that isn't a thing that other people are saying. That's just a thing that he says about himself.
Yeah, he's in the small town newspaper and he has ambitions of getting his foot back in the door with these big New York papers. And he's on this assignment that he does not respect. And he ends up kind of finding out or passing by these cliff dwellings where somebody has recently just gotten stuck. There was a cave in, and he was exploring, and then got stuck inside of the cliff dwelling. And he goes, "This is my moment." Like, somebody being stuck in a hole is perfect journalism, perfect catnip for news audiences. They want to return every day. What's the update on the Thai soccer team? Caught in the what did Elon Musk say? And like, he even like talks about at one point how these are specifically good stories. So he is an extremely cynical newspaper man, and we see how cynical he is because he is more interested in getting a good story than doing the right thing. When he is presented with the opportunity to get the guy out quickly, and he's like suffering, he's like pinned on the ground, they can reach him and they can talk to him through a hole, but they can't get through the hole because rocks would collapse on him. So he makes a decision to do a much more ostentatious and slower way of digging him out in order to manufacture a story of like building tension, the drill's getting closer.
They could have gotten him out in like a day, but he makes a decision
like to make it over a week and a half. And he ends up colluding with the local sheriff to like make this happen, and the guy is slowly dying more and more. All the while, he's got this fiance who is like trying to split the whole time, and she kind of hates him and doesn't really even care that he's dying and is just trying to get out of there. The fiance and the reporter are kind of framed as similarly cynical people who are just sort of out for themselves. It becomes a giant news story. He gets all of these offers from people. The collusion with the sheriff involves him the guaranteeing exclusivity over the story so you can have leverage, basically. And this whole media circus happens, including like literal circus stuff. Like people set up camp.
There are rides
outside. People set up camp outside, and then like Ferris wheels and stuff like arrive, and people are going like singing songs, but like it is not like, it's not like an earnest thing. It is, look at the spectacle that's happening right now.
Yeah. Well, it's like
eventually
it draws a crowd, and the crowd becomes this like self-sustaining thing where like people will show up just because they see a crowd.
Yeah. And eventually, right before they're about to reach him with the slower method, he dies. And
well, also because like they realize he's going to die imminently. He's like he's breathed too much of the dust in the cave, and like he's like, they don't get him out by a certain amount of time. Like he's going to die regardless of how much water or food they bring him. With that like looming death, Chuck, the main character, the reporter, starts to kind of realize like, oh shit, like I guess right. He's also like, this is only a good story if he lives at the end. Like people need a happy ending, right? I want to draw it out, but I also want people to get a good story out of this thing. And he's like, all right, let's switch back to the old, the fast way of doing it. Let's just get him out now. And they're like, well, now we can't do that anymore. We waited too long. And it's like, he has this kind of moment of like realization of like, oh, I fucked this up.
Yeah, right. Like he is cynical and playing everything. He's like playing everyone like a fiddle the whole time. And he's like, I got this. I control life and death.
Very smug.
Like he's not gonna die, whatever. Like he's fine with his leg pinned under a rock. And all these doctors are like, he's can't sit still for that long.
He's not
gonna
fine.
die. And yeah, there is a moment where he realizes that he's done the wrong thing, and then it's too late. His soul is already tarnished, basically. And he ends up having this conflict with the fiance, and she stabs him with some scissors. And at the end of the movie, he returns to the newspaper office and just collapses in the newspaper office.
Yeah. He has sort of a little confession moment to the editor, like the head of the newspaper. And then, just falls dead. The end.
Yeah. I mean, the guy is punished for his bad deeds as is required by the Hays Code.
Sure. But it's like, I don't know, it's a very satisfying ending. I found.
It's a tightly constructed kind of thematic situation. So certainly. But yeah, so there's our synopsis. What do we got?
And it's like one of the first like thoughts I had while watching this. Chuck, the reporter who's played by Kirk Douglas, has like such a great character intro where the first time we see him, he's like sitting in the driver's seat of his like fancy car, but his car is being towed. Like he's like sitting in his car as if he's driving, kind of like laid back, and yet he's like being pulled by a tow truck. Single image. This is a great character intro.
Yeah, it seems metaphorical in some way.
Right. Leave it to Billy Wilder, the director, to make a good movie. That's the thing I read about Billy Wilder, but also kind of noticed that he will kind of switch back and forth between these like very cynical movies and like really wacky comedies. And I
Mhm.
think like I think some of his slightly later movies, like The Apartment, kind of feel like they're a little bit like one foot in each, a little bit. This is definitely
Hmm.
much more in the cynical realm. He has a line pretty early on where he's like, "Bad news is the best news, or bad news sells best because good news is no news." And I'm like, ugh, I wish this movie didn't feel as like relevant to right now as it does.
I mean, it's evergreen in some ways. I think
Yeah.
it has these sort of like the cynical views that it has toward the institution of news are have been, or there are aspects of the news media that have existed from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a companion to this film is like Nightcrawler, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
like another movie that is just very cynic. It's about somebody who wants to make good news and is not afraid of making doing the wrong thing and making things worse for
Right.
people in order to make a good news story.
Exploiting an already bad situation in order to sort of like selfishly gain from it.
It feels like a well observed critique of certain aspects of the news, because no matter how reputable the newspaper, it is true that like good news doesn't sell.
Mm.
What news is bad things happening, as we have seen as we're trying to write the news segments of the
Right,
show.
right,
you
yeah.
know it's like, is this a
Right,
gimmicky segment where we just say a bunch of awful things? And it's like, well, that's what the news is. It's
right.
not
I mean,
news, it's
I
good.
think we try to put some sort of maybe not good news, but just like some lighter stuff in there just to balance it out too.
Yeah, but like as far as like the critique of like what news is, right? It
Yes.
is
Yeah.
like uncommon things happening that are bad things. And
Yeah.
we can see this in, like you talk about today, like people get impressions of the way the world is based on the things that they see in the news. And even though the things that people are seeing in the news are things that really happen, they are by definition things that don't actually
Right.
happen that much, because otherwise they wouldn't be news.
They wouldn't be notable. Yeah. I mean this movie predates the entire, concept of 24-hour news too, which I think has only exacerbated that problem and kind of made that like the exploitation that this movie shows kind of worse.
Yeah. I mean, it observed well a kind of fundamental flaw in the institution of newsmaking. And
Right.
like, I think people at the time in reviewing it felt that it was too cynical. Uh,
Mm.
and I think it's only borne out to be like pretty well observed.
Right.
Uh, the, Ho-
Yeah.
the Hollywood Reporter called it ruthless and cynical, a distorted study of corruption and mob psychology that is nothing more than a brazen, uncalled for slap in the face of two respected and frequently effective American institutions, democratic government and the free press. And it's like, these people are getting bent out of shape because it's like saying like we shouldn't trust the news, and like the news might be evil, and they're like, no it's not, but like turned out it was
Yeah.
kind of right.
I mean, because I also think this movie isn't. I don't feel like this movie is necessarily. I think this movie is very critical of like a certain type of journalism, right? Of like exploitative journalism. Whereas like, because like the newspaper he works at, it seems like is right. It's small town. It's like local news.
Yeah.
Everything this guy hates about his job. He's like, I don't care about local news. I want money. I want to make all my money back because he's worked at all these big city newspapers where he's paid a lot of money, and he was fired from all them because he's an asshole. And it's like he shows up at this little small town and is sort of like, hey, I want to work here for like a month. just so I have enough money to move back. Like he's very open about like, I don't care about doing a good job here. I'm purely here to like get out of my current financial situation. And then it like cuts ahead like 6 months or longer than he said he wanted to be there for, and he's like, I hate it here, I didn't expect to be here this long. He's just like blatantly telling everyone around him like, I don't like working with any of you, I'm only doing this because I want more money.
I mean, in the ways that it's, like you're right that like not every news person is like this in the movie. There are like, it seems like honorable people who make cross stitches about the importance of the truth in the office that he works in, and he finds them lame and dumb. But he I think what this movie is talking about, what this movie is kind of critiquing, are latent incentive structures that just exist within the institution of the news. And these incentive structures, you talk about, he only cares about money and he only cares about a good story. And like, these incentive structures are going to be here for everyone. And it only takes an unscrupulous person to take advantage of them.
Because those incentive structures exist outside of the news and outside of, they're just like, those are kind of baked into so much about just America. I think this movie is very critical of like almost like the concept of like American individualism too. That this guy is kind of pulling himself up by his bootstraps by being unscrupulous, which is very kind of romanticized in American culture. And this movie is like,
very,
this guy,
very Nightcrawler.
Yeah, but like, very similar ideas in that movie.
I think Nightcrawler more or less just like calls him the perfect capitalist.
Yes,
and like that is sort of what's going on.
And that character is like a total psychopath, like far more unscrupulous than I think this character is. This character has his sort of moment of realization of like, oh shit, like I've really fucked this up. This guy's dead because of me, because I exploited the situation, because I wanted more money, because I created this whole media circus around it. So like he does have this sort of like moment of self-reflection that I think does feel like a very sort of like 40s 50s movie thing, that like this character does learn a lesson before dying and getting his comeuppance. Nightcrawler is very much like, no, this guy just succeeds at everything he tries to do. Like the worse he is, the better things turn out for him. Which, as I think we've seen in the real world, happens a lot, where people just do awful things and only get rewarded for it. And yeah, I guess that's sort of like, it depends on what you're looking for out of a story, right? Like there is a satisfaction in watching this story, in this guy learning he's made a mistake and being punished for it. Whereas something like Nightcrawler is like, there's a satisfaction to that movie acknowledging that just like people like this sometimes just get what they want, in spite of all of their misdeeds.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like, the difference between this movie and Nightcrawler is that this movie is an indictment of the guy, and it is touching on the systemic things that the guy is taking advantage of, where Nightcrawler is a critique of the system, and so the guy succeeds because it's a critique of the system.
Yeah, it's more sort of like a critique of the system that allows this crazy psycho to succeed. Yeah. A thing brought up in this movie is the central kind of situation of the guy stuck in the cave is very similar, as like stated by the characters in the movie. And I think this movie is directly inspired by the real guy, Floyd Collins, who was stuck at the bottom of a cave and did create a media circus. And they did try to like drill a hole down to get him out, and he did die. I don't know if there was necessarily a single like unscrupulous reporter, but there was that kind of like hype and hysteria around it, like became this like long, weeks long news story. It's funny, this movie is like a dramatization of that real event while acknowledging that that was a real event,
Right. I mean, reportage can in many situations be inherently exploitative. And in the same way that maybe like the I don't know if Billy Wilder wrote this movie or not, but like the writer of this movie might have seen that story and then like saw something like icky and like predatory in it. It kind of reminds me of like the true crime era that we are in right now was like ushered in by the podcast Serial. And I remember listening to Serial when it was coming out, and going like, this is fascinating, but also there's something that feels a little icky about
Mm.
this, you know?
Mhm.
And
Right.
and just like maybe there was no unscrupulous person involved in like doing something particularly icky with the real life story that it's based on. Maybe they didn't have those kind of intentions with Serial, and now there are people who exist in the post serial true crime space who are just like really doing the wrong thing, and like you know,
Right.
taking this incentive structure of giving people the catnip of true crime that they want, and ruining people's lives, often innocent people's lives, to give it to them. So yeah, I don't know, a
Yeah.
parallel.
Yeah. Another movie about going down holes.
I was thinking that too.
How else are we gonna transition? Alice in Wonderland, the
Ah,
Disney animated film.
well, down and down the rabbit hole. Where it
Indeed.
stops, nobody knows.
Nobody know. We did watch a silent movie version of Alice in Wonderland at some point? Did we not?
That's a good question. That sounds familiar.
I know
I
they
think it was.
exist. They definitely made them. I don't know if we actually watched them for the show though. Much like Cinderella, this does feel like the kind of biggest pop culture, I don't know, instance of outside of the original story by what's his name, Lewis Carroll.
Mhm.
This is like kind of the most I don't know, the most famous, the most iconic film adaptation, I would say.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you know, although the Tim Burton one inexplicably made like $1 billion.
Sure, but even that is like riffing on this movie. Like
Yeah.
it's pulling
Oh, it's a
off.
remake of this movie. Yes.
Right, right. Is the Tim Burton one Disney?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
It's one of the
okay.
Disney live action remakes, like
Is
a
it?
la.
See, I guess I hadn't put that together. My biggest takeaway from this movie is that Alice in Wonderland is such a great source for like crazy dreamlike surreal imagery. There is no
But
narrative here to speak of.
oh yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, it is. It's a very strangely structured movie. By the way, yes, we watched a 1903 Alice in Wonderland movie.
Okay, I thought so.
I feel like there are parallel story issues in this movie with Cinderella, but they're
Hmm.
very different at the
Very
same
different,
time.
yeah. I do feel like
Uh,
Cinderella feels way more kind of like narratively focused than this does.
this, yeah, I like this. So Cinderella is a movie that has narrative problems, as in like they are, I don't know, struggling to have enough interesting stuff to do, and so they just throw a bunch of shit in there that
Mm.
barely is relevant. Where in this movie it is just a bunch of scenes, and there is
Right.
really no rhyme or reason to
Right. Which
anything
I've
that's
never
happening.
read like the original Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. I'm assuming that's just kind of how that is. It's just like here's a bunch of weird stuff that she sees and
Right.
like characters that she meets, and that's the whole thing. And Disney, the company or the man naturally is sort of like, if we animated this, it would look real wild, and we could really do a lot of fun animation stuff with it.
And I mean, to be fair, it does. Like, I
Yeah,
think that
and
this
it looks
is
amazing.
like visually, this movie is so cool. But
Yeah,
then,
and
like,
like the
I feel
actual
like,
the actual like animation of it is just so gorgeous and like well done.
I mean, I feel like it's such a cliche thing to like go like, what drugs were you on when you made this? But
What Alice in
but like,
Wonderland and psychedelics? No one's ever put those two things together.
I mean, yes, like, she's like eating mushrooms or whatever in the original
What's
book
in
and
that
all that.
hookah?
Like in this movie, there is like psychedelic imagery that seems to like presage like a lot of the psychedelic imagery of the 60s and 70s. And
Sure.
like
Yeah, some like
there's
just
like
like the patterns and such.
yeah, there's stuff in this movie where I'm like, I was reading through the Wikipedia article about this movie, and it's talking about how Aldous Huxley worked on a version of Alice in Wonderland for a second with Disney. A guy notable for doing mescaline and writing
Mm.
about it. And like, I do kind of wonder like how much,
How much of that is intentional?
yeah, like how much of the visual stuff that happens in the movie, particularly like when she's falling into the rabbit hole and there's just all
Hmm.
these like crazy colors everywhere. It's like, what like
I mean,
what precedent is there for this kind of imagery before
I
this
did
movie,
write
you know?
in my notes, this movie's never beating the "it's about drugs" allegations. Like,
Right.
right, not just like eating mushrooms and like her changing size, like uppers and downers, her like literally getting bigger or smaller.
Yeah.
Just like being handed so many weird bottles of unknown liquid, and he's like, I guess I'm gonna find out what this does, and then I'm like, now I'm talking to a caterpillar. It's like that. It's the shortest walk possible, you know.
Yeah. I was looking
But
at a
I don't know if that's intentional or not. Like, it might just be like, here's a bunch of
I mean,
crazy stuff.
is it intentional that they were making a drug movie? No. Like, is it intentional that they, like, maybe some of these people, they're artists who worked at Disney. Like, artists do drugs,
Oh yeah,
like,
hot take.
maybe,
Artists do drugs.
yeah. It's like I wouldn't be surprised if like some of the psychedelic imagery from this movie came from the animator's personal experience.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's kind of
Uh,
what I'm curious about.
well, they're all dead now, so who knows?
Yeah.
But there was this movie, because it has story problems, and is just not, I think it's like not a very emotionally engaging movie is the
No.
problem.
Yeah.
And Disney kind of, like, Walt Disney sort of ended up not being too fond of it, and so it never got a re-release until the 70s, I think.
Good
And
time for it.
exactly, there were all, and so I was looking at a New York Times article from 1974 that was talking about the reissue, and they're talking about how it's being booked in college film societies, discotheques, frat houses, and private homes, and quote, the financial failure of 1951 had become the turn-on film of 1972, following its big brother Fantasia into a haze of marijuana and hash. It's
Dude,
like,
this and Fantasia together, you got it. That's that and some of the old Devil's Lettuce. It's a good night right there.
yeah, a haze of marijuana and hash, according to the New York
Yeah,
Times.
at the discotheque, no less.
So at the, I think you might have seen this because we visited it. The Church of Cannabis in Denver.
Sure, yeah. I
They have,
visited it on 420, which was
yes.
a hell of a way to visit.
I don't remember if they actually played this when you were there, but they have like a kind of
I don't think so.
video light show type thing that
Right,
is normally the thing that they play, and it's like a projection mapped all over the surface, all over the ceiling of the church, and it has a lot of clips from this movie in that in that video.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean,
anyway,
I can see why.
Alice in Wonderland.
Right. I mean, to talk about the like actual story of this, it's like, yeah, Alice doesn't really have any agency. She's kind of just like stumbling through different scenes and like talking to different characters. She doesn't really learn anything at the end. She doesn't change. She's pretty passive the whole time.
No hugging, no learning.
No hugging, no learning. She doesn't even seem particularly like engaged the whole time. She's just kind of like, oh, okay. I guess I'm going through this door now. Like, she's like mildly worried at times, but like, or amused. But this movie's fairly whimsical, but also is sort of like it. There's some amount of stakes towards the end with like the queen and the head chopping. But even that feels it's like so fantastical and so kind of like surreal and dreamlike that it does I do think it captures a certain dreamlike quality of like, this is how dreams feel. Often you're just sort of wandering through different weird scenarios, and then you wake up and you're like, well, okay, that was cool.
Yeah. I mean, like, another kind of like aspect of the psychedelia, I feel like, is the just like drifting from thing to thing. It's just like, like definitely dreamlike in terms of like, just sort of accepting everything that's happening in front of you.
I'm curious if any of the people working on this movie were inspired by Jean Cocteau and like all of the surrealism in those movies. Or if I'm just sort of like, hey, these different people were making similarly dreamlike movies at the same time.
I mean,
I don't know if
certainly,
there was
like,
any actual
these
like cross
surrealists, like the surrealist paintings,
Right,
like
yeah.
have imagery that is reminiscent of stuff in this movie.
I guess I'm right. Another thing I'm curious about is just sort of like if there was any awareness of like Cocteau's movies by the people making this movie, and if that was any actual like direct inspiration. Or it's just like I'm watching these movies back to back, so naturally I'm sort of like, yes, similar.
It seems like at least like a kind of issue with the way that it was made that was sort of cited was that like people were sort of assigned a certain scene and they were just trying to make their scene as like wacky as possible, and so it is just all of these scenes all trying to like top each other. And so like there is just so much cool stuff in this movie in isolate.
Right. This is a great movie to have on in the background at a party.
Yes, indeed it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, is it like a great movie to like sit down and watch and feel like you watched a movie at the end? Not really. You know?
Yeah. I feel very much the same way. I will say I did not realize that Bill Peet, the children's book author and artist, has a story credit on this movie. I didn't realize that he worked at Disney in the 50s. So that's cool. If you or any of the listeners have not checked out any of Bill Peet's work, I recommend it. I was a
I'm not familiar.
big Bill Peet kid growing up. Oh, and one thing I kind of noticed that I thought was interesting is like, especially at the beginning, when in the quote real world, Alice herself, the character throughout, is animated in a bit more of the kind of slightly more old fashioned Disney style of rotoscoping and of like trying to kind of capture a certain realism. Whereas like once she goes down the rabbit hole and all the other like animal characters and things, and even human characters, once she's in Wonderland, are animated in a much more cartoonish, less realistic way.
Yeah, that's great. Because,
Yeah.
as I'm on record as not being a fan of the rotoscoping stuff that they do. And so this movie emphasizing the actual like bouncy, cartoony character animation is definitely
right. It's like it emphasizes it even further by having it kind of start in a more rotoscoping, like Cinderella-y style, and then like having it getting crazier as the movie goes along, which I thought was cool.
And, as is the case with a lot of Disney stuff, speaking of the kind of animation style, this is a movie that is really trying to, like, you can tell that something that the thought that went into this movie is like, look at what the power of animation is, like all of these scenes with all of the kind of reality warping, things playing with scale and just like things moving in ways that they couldn't move in real life, like the caterpillar's hookah smoke. Like it is all of these things that are just like it's taking this kind of non-real crazy psychedelic imagery and like using it as an expression of the potential of animation.
I like that. Sort of, I guess, somewhat similar to the fact that we probably both were first exposed to Streetcar Named Desire through The Simpsons. I feel like Ed Wynn plays the Mad Hatter in this movie, does the voice. And as soon as I heard I don't think I was really familiar with any of his actual like comedy or voice or acting work before this. I was like, oh, that's a voice that Conan O'Brien does. Like Conan O'Brien clearly knows Ed Wynn and is kind of like doing a version of his voice as like a silly voice.
Oh, I don't know if I caught that.
I don't think he's like doing an impression of him, but it's like I can see the sort of like lineage there where I was like, because it took me a while to figure that out. I was like, I feel like I've heard not this actual guy's voice, but I've heard people doing like impressions or versions of it, and it took me like the whole day to be like, oh, that's just a thing Conan does when he's like being extra silly. He's kind of doing a bit of an Ed Wynn voice.
Do you have anything else on this?
I like at the beginning when Alice is reading a book that only has pictures and she gets berated for it. And I'm like, hey, if Alice wants to read comic books, she should be allowed to. That is all.
Well, let's see. Another movie that has Queen in it.
Hey.
The African Queen.
There you go. But get this, it's a boat.
Directed by John Huston.
Indeed.
Of Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And,
again, working with Bogey.
Yes.
A cigar chomping Humphrey Bogart doing a lot of his patented belt acting in this movie.
His patented what?
Belt acting. I don't know if this is something you've picked up on. He does a lot of belt work. He's got a lot of business with his belt in movies. He's
a lot of business with his belt.
Do you know what I mean?
I know I do know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, that's like a thing I've just noticed with Humphrey Bogart is that like
he's always kind of like
He's always kind of adjusting his belt or just kind of, he does a lot of belt acting.
It's a good prop. I mean, I feel like when
But I don't know if I can't think of another actor that does that. Like, that's not a thing I've seen other actors do. That's just like something he does. I don't know.
in this movie, he's doing a lot of boat acting.
Also true.
This is a pretty simple film in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
It's almost kind of a hangout movie for a lot of it.
Yeah, more or less.
Like more than an adventure movie, which I think it's kind of billed as.
Yeah. Bogart is a kind of grizzled guy who pilots a steamboat up and down a river in German East Africa.
Sort of a Han Solo type.
He works at a mine, but only kind of sometimes. There is Katharine Hepburn and her brother are missionaries, and they're trying to teach people the ways of Christ in this remote village. The World War I starts, and the Germans come in and torch the entire place. Her brother dies, and she decides to both support her country of England and also sort of get revenge for her brother, although this isn't really stated, by saying, I've got nothing else to live for now. Let's go and attack some Germans as our patriotic duty.
Yeah.
And
let's turn your boat into a torpedo.
How do you make a torpedo anyway? She's like, my brother died earlier.
How do you make a torpedo?
Yeah. Like, my brother died earlier today. I'm over it. I'm turning that grief into a vengeance. Right. And so she's like, what is the way that we can fuck up the Germans as much as possible? Let's put a bunch of explosives inside of an air canister and turn it into a torpedo. So they take a long and sometimes treacherous journey down a river to try and attack this major kind of armored military boat that is in this large lake at the end of the river. On the path down, they fall in love with each other, and then they try and attack the boat. They fail and get caught, but then the boat accidentally rams into their torpedoes of their capsized boat anyway. And just as they're about to get hanged, the day is saved, and they've conquered. They've done their patriotic duty, and that's the whole movie.
Yeah,
that's basically everything in the movie.
Right. Right. It is like, it's a sort of treacherous journey along the river. But right, it's I think the main kind of hook of the movie, the reason why anyone watches it really is the sort of mismatched romantic plot of like Humphrey Bogart is this like grizzled, cigar smoking, gin swilling boat captain, and Katharine Hepburn is this like very like uptight, proper English woman who was working at a church and is like, oh heavens no, I can't be in the jungle. And it's just like that's such a good dynamic to kind of build your movie off of. I think that's where this movie gets the most. That's where I think the best stuff in this movie comes from.
I think that it's kind of interesting though, because this is maybe the least grizzled that we've ever seen Bogart.
Well, sure. Compared to, I wouldn't say least grizzled. He's pretty clean cut in some of them noir movies.
I'm not talking like visually. I'm talking like like in
right.
His
Maybe
vibe,
this is
right. He's less friendly in this movie.
He's quite friendly, right? A lot of other, even when he's more clean cut in like The Big Sleep or whatever, it's like he might kill you.
Yeah.
In this movie, it's like, he's very friendly.
I'm trying to help out, and like I didn't sign up for all of this. Like the part where he's the most kind of cynical in the way that a lot of his other characters are is he's just like, I didn't sign up to go on a suicide mission just because a war started, and like I don't know if
I just want to be on my boat. I'm good. Like I'm fine. Just taking my boat into a lagoon and waiting for this all to blow over.
Yeah.
I have 25 cases of gin. I'm good. But then Katharine Hepburn throws all the gin overboard, and we get sort of a why is the gin gone moment. Which I almost feels like that scene in Pirates of the Caribbean is alluding to this, or at least could have been inspired by that scene in this movie, where it's like the lady throws all the liquor away, and the drunkard is like, but no, that was all I had.
this oh, I should also mention the boat is called the African Queen.
Yes.
There is no African queen in this. In fact, it is in Africa in terms of the animals in Africa. It is not in the ways that it is referring to the people in Africa. It's a little unfortunate, which I always kind of, I saw the movie was called The African Queen. I was just like, this is, I don't even know what this is about, but yeah. And like, I can't say that I was proven wrong. It's definitely not, it basically just ignores regular African people enough that it doesn't have that much time to be racist, although it does take its time to be racist at points.
Sure.
It's basically the first thing that happens in the movie is just like, look at this Christian trying to like tame these savages, you know, and they're like not even they can't sing. She's been like trying to teach them church stuff for a decade, and like they can't follow along with the, it's like almost a comedic thing meant to be of like these like tribe people like in this tribe like can't sing along to these Jesus songs. They don't actually
Yeah, 'cause
care.
the songs are terrible.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It is pretty bold of this movie for the first moment of it to be like a very long scene of just cacophonous bad singing, and then the scene right after that to be deliberately boring scene where everyone's just like, this is awkward and boring, like we don't care about what you're saying, you know.
Yeah.
It takes like 7 minutes before anything pleasing happens in this movie.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about that during the opening scene of like, is this movie presenting this in a way in which me as an audience member am supposed to be laughing at or with either of these two groups of people, either the local tribes people or Katharine Hepburn. I certainly found Katharine Hepburn to be a much more absurd character in that moment, but I don't know if the movie is necessarily presenting that to me.
I
Or
don't
if I'm
see,
just
here's the
like,
thing. I don't think the movie is like taking a stance. I don't think the movie is saying like you should laugh at these people. Maybe it's like a light like, you know, oh, they're different or whatever. But
right.
like I don't think the movie is hateful intentionally. I think it is a movie that is way too unconsidered for something that is being set in Africa,
Right.
and it is being made in the time that it is being made in.
Right. It is entirely unconcerned with anyone who is actually from Africa.
Yeah.
The continent. I mean, this movie is set in the vague region of German East Africa, which was a section that now is Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Mozambique. So it could be anywhere in there. There's probably other like context clues to like exactly what like contemporary countries it takes place in. Yeah, it's basically just sort of like these two on a boat, and then there are some rascally Germans who are after them. That's basically the only characters in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this movie is just Katharine Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart in a boat and
Right.
just hanging out. And, I gotta say, I don't super buy their romance. Like,
No.
I don't.
I was actually
No.
surprised at how much I did. I mean, it's as like a realistic depiction of it, maybe not, but I found them to have a charming enough chemistry, and the mismatched nature of their characters to be fun enough for me to somewhat get on board. I think this movie is so kind of low energy that it's hard to get that invested in it.
It's surprisingly low energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. For a movie with like rapids and like guns and explosions and like peril, I found it to be very low energy. Yes.
Yeah, I think Hangout movie kind of makes sense. I see what they're doing with this like mismatched pair that grow to respect each other and then fall in love with each other. It's like a nice moment when she's like they get through the rapids and he kisses her, and then that's like the scene awkwardly ends, and then he's falling asleep. She makes breakfast for him, and she's like she's trying to wake him up, and she calls his name, and then she goes, dear. And like that's like it's like a cute little moment where it's like, oh, like is this is this real now? And like I was almost afraid that like he was gonna get up and go like, don't call me that. Like this is not that serious, lady, you know. But then they're just like immediately like, like, and
Right. Yeah.
I think that it doesn't super work for me. I get what they're doing, and I think it kind of halfway comes together. But I'm not swept up, let's say.
No, yeah, I wasn't really swept up either. It was sort of like, oh, this is nice. This is charming enough. But yeah, I wasn't terribly emotionally invested. Um there's a lot of there's a lot of this movie that is clearly shot on location on an actual river. I'm not sure where it was shot. I think at least some of it was shot on the continent of Africa.
I mean, there's a big title at the end that just says "filmed in Africa."
Yeah. Where? We're not going to say. Filmed on Earth. But there's a lot of VFX in this movie, which surprised me. Like there's a lot of compositing. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure exactly how it was done. I actually tried to find out more about the VFX in this movie, and I couldn't find a lot of information on it. Of like, it doesn't really look like rear projection. It looks like actual like some kind of like optical compositing.
I think there are some parts that might be rear projection, but I think there are moments, particularly when they're in the rapids, where you can kind of
Yeah,
see like
yeah.
the
There's
sort of
like
fringing around
right,
them. That,
yeah. But
like
it's like it doesn't look like matte lines as like sort of typically think of matte lines looking. So I'm very curious of like
I mean,
how that was
I think
done.
it's green screen or blue screen.
But like, were they doing blue screen effects in 1951?
The first blue screen movie was the Thief of Baghdad remake in 1940.
Okay. Well, there you go. I mean, and also, I guess worth saying, this movie is shot in color, in Technicolor by Jack
Yes.
Cardiff, who's the Powell and Pressburger DP. Shot a bunch of their movies, so it looks
Mhm.
great. Like the Technicolor in this movie, I think is very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole bit where they like go through a swarm of bugs that looks awful. I think it's like very bad effects where
Yeah,
it's just like a filter they put on top of it.
it was very it's very strange. Like it kind of just fades into existence of a bunch of like specks that are on the
Right, and
screen
like not even
and don't
bugs,
even
just like
really sell.
yeah, it's yeah,
Yeah, they don't sell the idea of bugs that well.
yeah, it's not great, but that stuff seemed notable to me that like I hadn't seen like even Day the Earth Stood Still has like a lot of like VFX in it, but it's like stuff that I think it's much better done in that movie, but it's like stuff I associate much. It's like miniature effects and
Yeah.
things like that. Whereas this, I was like, I'm very curious just how this was. It doesn't always look good. A lot of it doesn't look good, but yeah. And I guess the fact that it is shot in color means that they could have done some kind of blue screen or
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell exactly what was going on, but I think like I was getting like hints of color around the edges of them
same, which
that like meant to seemed to
right,
indicate that it was like a blue screen or a green
right,
screen.
that it was not rear projection. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
There's a part where like there's like the all is lost moment in this movie where it turns out they're actually like just 100 yards away from their destination, but they give up and because they've been bitten by leeches and are sick and everything.
Mm.
And there's a part where she like is just like, we're about to die, but God, make sure we go to heaven and hope like or fix this situation, I don't know. And then it's just like there is a literal like ray of sunshine that comes down. I was like, it's a bit much, you know.
Yeah.
I kind of simultaneously hate this moment and love this moment where they are about to get hanged by the Germans, and they're just like, wait, can you marry us first? Admirals on boats can marry people, right? They're at the nooses, and the German guy's like, okay. And then he goes, I now pronounce you man and wife. Proceed with the execution, which is a hilarious line, but I'm also just like, this is a little too stupid. Like I can't.
I really like that moment. I think by that point in the movie, I was just like, "Hey, this is like again, this is fun and charming. Things are happening. I'm on board." But speaking of movies that look great in Technicolor,
An American in Paris.
ooh,
Gene Kelly.
Another charming Gene Kelly musical romp.
I just love charming Gene Kelly.
Dude,
Gene Kelly's
Gene Kelly can like charm his way through a brick wall. Like,
he just like smiles
goddamn.
toward the camera, and I'm just like, I love this movie. The second he smiles at the camera, I'm just like, I'm so happy.
Same. Yeah. This one is directed by Vincent Minnelli. Yeah, I feel like this maybe sensing somewhat of a theme with the movies we watched for 51. Not a lot of like narrative stuff going. There is some. There's like, love triangles and such, but like that all kind of feels secondary to just like the atmosphere of this movie and just the general sort of like romanticism of living in Paris.
Yeah.
Like that's really what this movie is about at the end of the day. It's just sort of like, ain't living in Paris swell. Gene Kelly, charming bastard, is an American living in Paris after World War II. He stayed in France. He was just like, you know what? This place is great. He's a painter. He lives in a nice little apartment above a cafe, and he's just going about his life, eating baguettes and painting pictures and having just a grand old time. He's approached by this like wealthy woman who offers to kind of like buy his paintings and to like show him around to potential other buyers and kind of like bring him into like her world of like high society a bit more. And he's
Be
like,
a benefactor.
whoa, lady, you don't own me. I'm just a painter. He's like very, very defensive about all of this. He's like, I can make my own way, which I get. He's a little like overly defensive. I think he's got some maybe some hangups about it.
I think he's immediately suspicious that she wants to get with him, which is true.
Which is true, right? He was reading the situation correctly. At the same time, he also very in a not cool way, sort of is trying to woo this woman that he randomly meets at a nightclub, who repeatedly tells him she wants nothing to do with him, but he's just like, I'm gonna keep showing up to your work. Oh well, can't stop me. And that woman, Lise, is in fact dating and at some point engaged to like one of Gene Kelly's best friends, who he hangs out with at the cafe. And so there's all this complicated romantic back and forth and who's dating who and what, who knows what and who does this and that. It kind of doesn't matter at the end of the day. And the movie almost like acknowledges this. It's just like, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
There are some definitely like plot threads that it just sort of drops by the end of the
Absolutely.
movie.
And the movie kind of recognizes that that's not really why you're watching this. You're watching this because you want to see fun, charming dance numbers and color and sweeping dance sequences. And it gives you all of that. So
this movie ends with a 17-minute dance sequence that is set to George Gershwin's An American in Paris. Definitely like evoking the sort of ballet scene in The Red Shoes.
Sure.
I think that
right, and it is like wordless the whole time. There are no
Yes.
song lyrics. There is no dialogue. It is a like purely music and dance sequence. Yeah.
I think if I'm to critique the music and that scene a bit, some of the songs, like, and the subject matter of the songs feel like not super motivated. Like it's just like, we've decided that this is the thing that we're going to talk about now, and now we're going to sing about it. But it doesn't really like loop into the rest of the story. And likewise with that long dance sequence, I think there were really cool parts of it, but there were also parts where I was like getting a little bored because like the imagery that you're seeing in the dance sequence is cool, but it doesn't feel super motivated.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think like this is a problem that's definitely solved in an American or in Sing in the Rain, where all of the music in that movie just feels like so linked in with the story in a really good way. And the dance sequence in The Red Shoes, it's taking you away from reality for 20 minutes, but like it feels like it has a good place in what's going on, where La La Land is kind of aping a lot of this movie, but like in particular like the end scene of La La Land where they're fantasizing about this other kind of way that things are, it's like more or less the same thing that's happening with the genesis of that 17-minute dance scene, but La La Land like keeps it a lot more relevant and it keeps it a lot shorter. I don't want to be so down on this though. This is a fun, charming movie though.
It's a very fun, charming movie, but I also think it is like, I do think The Red Shoes is like a better film. It's a better piece of storytelling than this is. Although this is definitely something I think I'm more likely to kind of throw on than The Red
Yeah.
Shoes. The Red Shoes is like pretty heavy as a story, whereas this is like, Paris, it's fun. We're painting.
Yeah.
There's
But
dancing, there's
also-
songs.
Also, you can just put on Singing in the Rain, which is
Just
I
all of that and also a better movie. Yeah.
yeah.
True.
Like I like this. I like the New York movie that with Miss Turnstiles that we watched.
Oh
a
yeah,
couple
on the town.
episodes ago.
Yeah.
On the Town. But like these both feel like prototypes that would be perfected with Singing in the Rain.
Right. That's Singing in the Rain is like taking all of the pieces of those of this and On the Town and Act, just making like a masterpiece out of it. But still, I was very charmed by this movie, even though I have a lot of like, I think narratively I have a lot of problems with it. I think it presents a very bad form of trying to flirt with women and getting them to date you. I think Gene Kelly does not behave in a way that is very admirable.
It's a good thing he's got that smile. Otherwise, I would have had bad feelings about him.
Absolutely. He does not behave in a very gentlemanly way, in my opinion.
It's a very like my grandpa has a story about how like he finally wore down my grandma until they got
You don't
married.
want any romantic story to contain the phrase "wore down." That's just not. That's not. It's one of the more unromantic things something can be. But there's lots of just like great little moments of joy in this movie. I love the way it looks, like the Technicolor of it,
Of course.
naturally, and just like the romanticism around, I think, like the city of Paris, which I'd never been to, but the kind of like this kind of romantic mid-century artist lifestyle where he lives in this like attic apartment above a cafe. All of his friends like live on the same street. He's like strolling down the street with his paintings under one arm and like grabbing a coffee and a baguette.
Yeah, very romantic in that way. They're going to all of these like highly themed parties at highly themed nightclubs.
Yes, themed parties and nightclubs. Yes, please. But I'm the whole time watching this movie, I'm like, why can't real life be like it is in the pictures? Like that was very much my entire takeaway from this. There's lots of just like great moments. Like this movie kind of has multiple POV characters outside of Gene Kelly also. One of whom is a musician and a songwriter. That's not Henri. That's Adam Cook, played by Oscar Levant, who was an actual pianist and composer. And he has a line early in the movie where he says something along the lines of, "I'm a musician," which is a pretentious way of saying I'm unemployed. And I'm like, can't relate to that at all. When I introduce myself at the beginning saying I'm a filmmaker, it is a pretentious way of saying I'm unemployed. So it's like, but even that is like kind of presented in this like romantic way of just like, right?
Yeah.
The struggling artist, right?
For sure.
And there's repartee.
Yeah. I like there's at one point somebody says Monsieur Le Wise Guy, and I love that.
Monsieur Le Wise Guy. Someone says, "You only find the right woman once," to which they respond, "That many times?" Yeah, I find this movie incredibly joyful and charming, and yet, is it good? Right? It's like I struggle to call it good necessarily because I think that a lot of the character writing is just wonky and weird, and like the narrative has very little payoff.
Yeah.
But I had a good time. So, does it matter? Who's to say?
Yeah. This movie, I mean, does some things that I appreciate about musicals, especially like Technicolor musicals, which is that it like, does some kind of fun reality breaking sort of stuff as far as like visual kind of things. Like there's a part where Lisa is being like imagined by the friends, and she's like giving a different adjective to describe her every time, and then they like reimagine her in like a different scene, and all the scenes are like an entirely bright red world.
Right. This one's all yellow. This one's all green. Yeah.
And like she's got like a themed dress or like a dress that's like all like one kind of big solid color that like goes with this like scene that she's in. There's like one where like everything was red, including like these monstera plants that were like painted red. And it had it was like Miss Turnstile's visualizations.
It reminded
in
me
the
a
last
lot of the
movie.
Miss Turnstiles scene. Yeah.
Which is it's just fun. It's just like the movie pauses for a second to just sculpt these images of these extremely bright colors and her just kind of dancing in different scenarios. There is a part that references Charlie Chaplin, which I feel like we gotta point out.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Where he's like tap dancing and like doing some stuff for kids, and like some kids that pass by, they all love him because he gives them American candy. And they like there's a point where he does like a sort of tap dance interpretation of Charlie Chaplin. You can just sort of tell from Gene Kelly is so good at moving his body that you can like just tell that it's Charlie Chaplin or the tramp. But he also is walking through a bunch of tap dances, and then he does the shim sham, which is the dance that I learned in my tap dancing class.
Hey, there you go. See, you know the shim sham. I don't know the shim sham. That's a great name for a dance. We're dancing the shim sham over here.
It's very descriptive. You kind of just like shim sham back and forth.
I do feel also like Gene Kelly has a great like old movie voice, where it's like, oh boy, look at that.
Yeah, that's
Here we
because
go.
He spent a lot of time going round and round the rugged rocks the ragged rascal ran.
Damn, I did that better than I could probably. I'm not gonna try.
Moses supposes his toes are roses. That's all I'm saying.
I feel like because this movie doesn't have like a whole lot going on other than it's like really elaborate musical sequences. I kind of don't know what else to talk about. I mean, there's the one bit with the pianist where he's like imagining himself as like all parts of the orchestra. He's the conductor, he's the full orchestra, he's on the piano. That was like, it was a cool scene, but did feel it's like shot with like, it's like 4 different camera angles and it just kind of repeats. I feel like it wasn't necessarily as dynamic as the other numbers in the movie.
There's a part where he shakes hands with himself, and it's like relatively seamless of him in both places. It's like a double shaking hands with himself. I think they did that by like they had like a plate of him with his arm behind him, and then they just added in like a hand, like someone else's hand that he shook. But it works really well.
Right, yeah.
When you have a special effects double of somebody, you want to show off by doing something like that, or like in Sinners where they're passing the cigarette back and forth to each other.
Yeah. And that's like, I don't know, it's like little moments like that of just like going above and beyond just to sell it, of like, we don't have to do this. Like, we can put the same actor in the frame twice, and like, you get it. They're like, there's 2 of them. But like, it's those little things where it's like, there's some quote where it's like, actual magic is just doing something that no one would ever have expected you to like put the effort into. Like, that's kind of like the whole Jackie Chan thing, where he's just like, I did this crazy sequence of like stunts where I like threw a pen up in the air and grabbed a thing and like flipped around. And it's just like, the thing that's impressive about this is that it looks like it's just done in the moment, but he did it 400 times in a row until he got it just right. And so it's sort of like, yeah, once you reveal the secret, it's like, oh, he just did it 400 times. There is a quote about this that is great, that like sums it up better than I'm doing. That like, that's what magic is. Like, either like stage magic or just sort of that applies to a lot of filmmaking also, of just like, the thing that's impressive about this.
I'll defer to you on this because you're the one that's been to the Gothic castle.
I've never been to the Gothic castle. I've been to the actual place, the Magic Castle. I mean, that's a place full of things. I was like, I have no idea how anyone does any of the stuff I saw there. That was genuinely mind-blowing. But like, I think about this a lot with like Roger Rabbit, where like they would go out of their way so often to like do things that are really hard to do to blend live action and animation, just so then you're sort of like, it sells it so much more that it's like, we didn't have to do this, but the fact we put so much more like detail into it is now like, you know what I mean?
I think
I'm doing a bad job of explaining this concept, but
I think that it's like a fine line in a way, though, and maybe it's just because I'm too like aware of cinema, and maybe like what they're going for is if it is done in a low effort way, then it might end up looking shoddy enough that any random person would be able to go, I see how that was done. And if they do it in a way that kind of tricks your brain into seamlessness, then maybe like an average person is not thinking like, how did they do this? That is just giving you it is not showing off, it's giving you the sense of, suspension of disbelief. Honestly, that part in Sinners where they were passing the cigarette back and forth, it took me out of the movie because I was like, you're showing off too much. Like,
I see. I now see how you're selling this effect.
right. Like, it's like, in Roger Rabbit, they're moving the camera in order to, and it's going to make things difficult, but they're not doing it to take you out of the movie and go, look, wow, look at how difficult the thing they did is.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing it
right.
to keep you
bring
in
you
the
into
movie.
the movie. Yeah.
And like that part in Sinners, and I've seen other examples where, people do as an effect, and then like, or like in your face oneer, like it's the kind of thing where it's like, you're taking me out of the movie because what you're asking me to do is not believe in the movie anymore. You're asking me to be impressed at what you're doing.
Right. Which I think in some instances, I was talking to someone about this, about like, the difference between like a showy oneer and a sort of invisible or seemingly invisible oneer. Like the scene in Jaws when they're on the barge going across the bay. Yeah. And it's just like the camera stays in one place, but just like the actor blocking keeps changing. So it's like, it feels like it's like 5 shots in one and just there's no cuts, but you're not thinking about it, which I think is great. And then also like maybe one of, if not the most famous, like oneer in movies, the bit in Goodfellas where they go through in the back door into the restaurant. Like the thing that works about that is that it is very showy, but it's like the character is showing off. The character is being like, come this way, come look, I know all these people, I can go in the back way. And it's like that, like the camera work is mirroring the character also being like, look what I can do, look how cool I am. And it's like that makes it work. Whereas if it's just like a guy going to get groceries and it's a oneer, I feel like I'm shitting on Shaun of the Dead because that's literally a scene in Shaun of the Dead that's a oneer of him getting groceries. But it's even in that case, like that's kind of a joke to be like, we're gonna do this really elaborate camera thing, and it's like, but it's also done twice. I think that is a great moment in that movie.
Anyway, for this movie,
no oneers in this movie really. So
in this movie,
there's some long
the moment that I'm talking
dancing.
about, the moment that I'm talking about of him shaking his own hand lasts for a very short time. It's not like this is how we got into all of this. It lasts for a very short time, and it, it's just like, oh, cool, nice, But it's also like in a scene where you're trying, that it's not reality, so it doesn't need to be super realistic.
Sure. What was your favorite movie that we watched from 1951?
It's a little tricky. I think that I'm very intrigued and I'm very impressed by Streetcar Named Desire, but I think that the movie that I just straight up like enjoyed the most and I feel like I got the most out of was probably The Day the Earth Stood Still.
I mean, big surprise, same. Day the Earth Stood Still it's gotta be my favorite. I mean, it's too much. It's just too up my alley for it not to be. But I do think it's genuinely found it to be like the most engaging film, even though I'd seen it already. That just like it pulls you in, it keeps you locked in to what's going on. So 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs way up. we can't do that. It's trademarked or whatever.
No, is that infringement of some kind?
Anyway, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for joining us. Hey, look, we just made 100 subscribers.
This plaque could have been an email.
We got this lovely cardboard plaque for 100 subscribers. YouTube gave it to us. I didn't just draw this. Anyway, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. And I guess we'll see you in the next one. Glenn?
Indeed.
See you next year.
See you next year.
I like you, Mr. Carpenter. You're a real screwball.